So we discussed the various modalities of entrepreneurship, different approaches to being an entrepreneur. So now we're going to address finally why be an entrepreneur at all. We've talked previously about some of the misconceptions and difficulties and the problems of being an entrepreneur. And I want to end this session on an up note. Entrepreneurs have big advantages over companies, big companies. Number one, they can fit their companies to a niche that large companies overlook. So I mentioned before that when you detect that you have no competition in your market, you should ask why. One of the main reasons why is that a large company has looked at the same market you're looking at and decided to pass because that market is too small for them. Large companies need large businesses to move the needle, if you will, financially for them. And so if you're a billion-dollar company, you're not necessarily interested in a million-dollar business. So that's the right answer to the question, why don't you have competition? And the answer is the niche is too small. These niches are perfectly fine for you, and they do afford you an opportunity. Huge advantage you have over large companies. Another advantage entrepreneurs have is they don't have the need to satisfy an embedded base of customers. Large companies have a lot of customers that they have to keep happy. It's 5 to 10 times more expensive to sell a new customer than it is to keep an old one. So they spend a lot of time keeping their old customers happy. That's good. But what that can mean sometimes is that their embedded base of customers would prevent a lot of innovation. Customers often like their product. They don't want change. They're accustomed to the product that they're already getting. And so they resist changes that the large company wants to introduce. For example, you have the case of Eastman Kodak. Was a leader in photography, and people forget that it was Eastman Kodak that invented digital photography. But they're unable to capitalize because their embedded base of users resisted that. In particular, people that were developing film didn't like the idea of digital photography. And so in order to keep them happy, Eastman Kodak felt constrained from offering digital photography in a large scale. Another advantage that entrepreneurs have is they can only lose their invested capital. So if you're an entrepreneur, you invest $1,000 in a company and you go broke, you lost $1,000. If a large company invests $1,000 into a product and the product fails, it may be the case that the large company loses more than $1,000 worth of goodwill, brand reputation, or market cap. So in many cases, the large company has a greater risk than the entrepreneur in the event of product failure. So these are huge advantages that entrepreneurs have over big companies and should be part of the equation when you think about whether or not to start your own business. There's a large benefit to learning some of the concepts we're developing here, even if you have no plan to start a company. You work in a large company, it's good to learn how to work with limited resources. In a large company, you may not get the budget you want. But in a small company, entrepreneurs are constantly wrestling with insufficient resources and insufficient information. And learning how to deal with that is a useful skill even if you work in a large corporation. Large corporations partner often with small businesses. They have small business clients. And so learning some of these concepts of entrepreneurship will help you deal better, if you will, with small business partners and small business clients. Big companies fragment. They break apart. They spin off business entities. And sometimes you may be part of that spinoff. So understanding how entrepreneurship works would be useful in the event that you are part of a spinoff. You may lose your job. You may get fired. Or you may just get tired of your job. In the event that you lose your job, our suggestion here is that knowing entrepreneurship is your best form of job security, because now you have the tools to strike out on your own, and you're resilient to whatever events that the larger economy may provide you. So again, why be an entrepreneur? It's because you want to make progress. This is from George Bernard Shaw. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. I think it's a great quote, and in fact underlies a lot of the motivation for why people want to and should be entrepreneurs. So, with this session, we've developed the following core concepts. What are some misconceptions about entrepreneurship that young entrepreneurs in particular have, and how do they overcome those misconceptions? What is the role of the ecosystem, and how do you interact with it? What are the various approaches to entrepreneurship you should consider? What are the benefits of understanding entrepreneurship? And with these, we'll have the next session regarding entrepreneurial process.